My mother called my venue and canceled everything, then told my fiancé the wedding is off. He changed his mind. When my fiancé called me crying, I realized the sabotage had been going on for months. So I pulled up every message my mother had sent. My name's Owen. I'm 29. I teach high school English, $64,000 a year. I grade 140 essays a week. I coach junior varsity soccer in the fall. I own a car that's paid off, have $11,000 in savings, and I've never missed a rent payment in my life, which I mention because that becomes relevant when my mother tells people I'm financially unstable. I'm not. I'm a public school teacher who lives within his means. But Gail had a different version of me, and she was distributing it to everyone who mattered. I'm engaged to Carmen. She's 27, dental hygienist, $54,000. Carmen is the kind of person who reads the fine print on everything, notices when a number is off on a restaurant bill, keeps her car's oil change schedule in a spreadsheet. She's organized the way some people are brave, not because she chose it, but because the alternative makes her nervous. I love her. The spreadsheet thing becomes important later when you learn she also keeps a folder on her phone called MIL with 47 screenshots in it. Until 12 weeks ago, I thought the only obstacle between us and a wedding was a seating chart. I was wrong. The obstacle was my mother, and she'd been building it for 3 months while I stood at a whiteboard explaining metaphors to 11th graders. Gail is 58, hasn't worked in 20 years, but runs our family the way other people run campaigns. Message discipline, strategic information control, and a rotating cast of people who don't know they're being managed. She doesn't yell, doesn't threaten. She whispers. She plants. And every conversation ends with some version of the same 6 words. Please don't mention this to him. 19 times. To 19 different people. Over 3 months. Not once did anyone pick up the phone and tell me. My father, Walt, is 61. Retired postal worker. Watches baseball. Has survived 34 years of marriage to Gail by mastering the art of being physically present and emotionally elsewhere. He's not a villain in this story. Not a hero either. Not yet. My sister Becca is 26. Lives at home. Quiet in a way I used to think was shyness. Turns out it's closer to survival. Carmen's parents are Luis and Rosa. Luis is a retired trucker who built a garage in his backyard because the contractor's quote offended him. Rosa raised 4 children and has the kind of patience that only comes from decades of practice and a deep belief that losing your temper is a waste of energy. They are good people. They are also the first people my mother lied to. The whispers started before the invitations were printed. I teach 5 periods a day. Between 10 and 11:30 a.m., I'm in back-to-back sections. No phone. No breaks. Gail knew this schedule. She'd known it for 6 years. Every message she sent during the 3-month campaign was sent between 10 and 11:30 on a weekday. She turned my teaching hours into her operational window. Here's what she built. To Carmen's mother, Rosa. I'm worried about Owen. He's not sleeping well. I think the wedding costs are overwhelming him. Between us, I don't think he's ready for this kind of commitment. Maybe you could talk to Carmen about waiting a year? Please don't mention this to him. I'm just being a concerned mother. Rosa, who loves her daughter and trusts the concern of another mother, brought it up with Carmen over dinner. Carmen went cold. Who told you that? Rosa hesitated. Nobody. I have a feeling. Carmen pushed. They argued. First real fight in years. Carmen told Rosa she was being paranoid and unsupportive. Rosa backed off, hurt and confused. Neither of them knew that the fight they just had was written by Gail from 30 miles away. Every word of Rosa's concern came from a text she received at 10:14 a.m. on a Wednesday. To my side of the family, the story was the opposite. Gail called my aunt and said, Carmen's family is pressuring Owen into this expensive wedding. They want everything a certain way, and Owen's too polite to say no. I'm worried he's going to end up paying for things he can't afford just to keep them happy. Don't tell him I said anything. 2 families. 2 opposite stories. Both held in place by the same closing line. To 3 of my groomsmen, separately, Owen's been having doubts. He's not sleeping. He asked me not to say anything, but I'm just so worried. Could you check in on him? Maybe suggest he take some time. 2 of them did. I remember standing in my kitchen 3 weeks before the wedding, and Dev leaning against the counter with a beer and saying, Hey, no judgment. But, you sure about all this? I was confused. I said, What do you mean? He shrugged. Just making sure. You seem tired. I told him I was fine. He nodded and changed the subject. He wasn't being weird. He was executing an assignment from my mother. She sent him to my kitchen to plant doubt, and he didn't even know he was carrying her luggage. To the vendors, florist, caterer, venue coordinator, Gail's version was that the couple was going through a difficult time, and the wedding was likely being postponed. She asked about cancellation policies, refund timelines, rebooking options, laying groundwork for weeks before the actual cancellation, not reacting to a crisis, building infrastructure for one. Carmen's maid of honor Jess started pulling away about 6 weeks out. Missed a dress fitting. Short text replies. Canceled the planning lunch. Carmen was hurt. Did I do something wrong? I told her Jess was probably just busy. She wasn't busy. Gail had messaged her. Between us, the wedding might not happen. Owen's going through a lot, and I don't want to see you invest your time and energy in something that could fall apart. Just protect yourself. And please don't say anything. I'm just looking out for everyone. Jess believed it. The groom's mother told her the wedding was dead. Why wouldn't she believe it? She pulled back from her best friend's most important event because a woman she trusted told her it wasn't real. 19 conversations. 3 incompatible narratives running simultaneously. And every single one sent during my third period class. On a Tuesday in March, Gail called our venue at 10:47 a.m. Hi, I'm calling on behalf of my son Owen Reeves. He can't make the call right now. I need to process a full cancellation for the booking on June 14th. The reference number is. She provided everything. The coordinator confirmed the details. Gail thanked her warmly. Her voice on the recording, which I didn't know existed yet, sounded like a woman ordering flowers. Then, about 4 minutes in, her voice cracked. You could hear a shaky breath. This is so hard for me. I love my son. I just want what's best for him. You know how it is. The coordinator softened, expressed sympathy, said she understood. Gail thanked her again. And then, less than 3 seconds later, without transition, completely composed. Now, regarding the deposit refund, can you confirm the timeline for processing? Performed grief to administrative precision in under 3 seconds. The coordinator she was speaking to was being manipulated in real time and had no idea. She had the booking details because she'd stolen them. 3 weeks earlier, she visited our apartment, asked to use the bathroom, was gone for 15 minutes. Carmen noticed because the kettle boiled and cooled and she had to reboil it. When Gail came back, "Oh, that soap is lovely. Where did you get it?" "The farmer's market." She sat down. Tea. Wedding chat. Warm and interested. She wasn't in the bathroom. She was in our home office photographing the venue contract, the caterer agreement, the florist invoice, and every booking reference number on the desk. She went in as a concerned mother. She came out with everything she needed to cancel a wedding from her living room. And she complimented the soap. 2 hours after the venue call, she called Carmen. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something. Owen's been struggling with this for weeks. He came to me last night and said he's not ready. The wedding is off. He didn't know how to tell you himself, so I offered to do it. I'm so sorry." Carmen called me at 2:47 p.m. between classes, crying so hard the first 3 sentences were just sound. When the words came, "Your mother just called. She said you canceled the wedding. She said you told her last night. She said it's over. Owen, please tell me that's not true." "It's not true. She said you're not ready." "I didn't say that. I've never said that to anyone." Then why would she? That question hung in the air between us, and neither of us had the answer yet. But we would. Within 72 hours, we'd have more answer than either of us wanted. Carmen handed me her phone that night. She was sitting on the couch with her shoes still on, the way you sit when you haven't fully arrived at a place because part of you is still in the moment that sent you there. She opened a folder on her phone. The label read MIL. Inside, 47 screenshots. 3 months of messages from Gail. I scrolled through them. The first was dated January 15th. A message from Gail asking Carmen to keep an eye on Owen's mood because he seemed overwhelmed. Innocent enough. The 5th was less innocent. Gail suggesting Carmen might want to reconsider the venue size because Owen is stressed about finances but too proud to say so. By screenshot 20, Gail was telling Carmen that protagonist's friends were worried about him too, which was true because she'd been the one who made them worried. By screenshot 35, Gail was telling Carmen to think about whether you're both really ready for this, and signing off with, "I'm only saying this because I love you both." Carmen looked at me while I scrolled. I saved every one. From the first message that felt wrong. I didn't show you because I thought maybe she was just worried. Maybe I was being oversensitive. Maybe this is just what mothers-in-law are like. I kept telling myself that. For 3 months. While she was reading my texts on an iPad I keep next to the toaster. She paused. I should have shown you on day 1. 47 screenshots. 3 months of evidence my fiancée carried alone because she loved me enough to try handling it quietly, and because she'd been conditioned by the same whisper campaign to doubt her own instincts. Gail's best trick wasn't the lies. It was making the people who caught the lies think they were the ones overreacting. I contacted every vendor. Called them one by one from my kitchen table with a notepad, the same kind I use for parent-teacher conferences. The florist had 4 emails from Gail. I'm Owen's mother. He's asked me to coordinate some changes. She downgraded the arrangement twice without telling us and asked about cancellation refunds a week before the venue call. The caterer had 3 messages. The first was friendly, introducing herself. The second raised budget concerns. The third, sent 2 days before the cancellation. The couple is going through a difficult period. Can you walk me through the deposit refund process? The caterer told me she almost called Carmen to confirm, but Gail's message ended with, please don't contact them directly right now. It's a sensitive time. The venue coordinator had the recorded call plus 6 emails stretching back 7 weeks. The first email was a general inquiry about rescheduling policies. By email 4, she was asking specific questions about contract termination clauses. By email 6, she was requesting the cancellation. 7 weeks of groundwork before the phone call. Every vendor saved the correspondence because it felt off. The florist told me. Something about the way she emailed didn't sit right. Mothers usually ask questions about flowers, not refund policies. 6 inboxes. 3 months. All preserved independently by professionals who sensed something wrong but couldn't name it. My mother's campaign was invisible to her own family and detectable by complete strangers who'd never met her. Because strangers don't have a lifetime of trust overriding their instincts. I listened to the full venue recording and heard Gail mention a catering change we discussed in our kitchen 2 nights earlier. Just us. Door closed. Nobody else present. A switch from plated to family style because the per head cost dropped by $14. We hadn't told anyone. Not the caterer. Not the venue. Not family. We discussed it over takeout on a Wednesday night and hadn't made a final decision. I turned to Carmen. How would she know about the catering change? Carmen went pale. Not angry pale. Something clicking pale. Check my iPad settings. I opened the iPad settings. Found Gail's Apple ID logged into iMessage. Active for 6 months. Set up during a visit where Gail offered to sync the family calendar for wedding planning. She spent 20 minutes with the device while Carmen made tea. Carmen came back and Gail was smiling. All set. Now we'll all stay on the same page. Carmen thanked her for helping. Anything for family. For 6 months, every text Carmen sent or received was mirrored to Gail's devices. Every argument between us that resolved by bedtime, Gail read the next morning. Every insecurity Carmen shared with Jess or her sister, Gail saw it before the reply arrived. Every wedding decision discussed in private. Every, I'm stressed today text. Every time Carmen vented about her mother or worried about money or said something vulnerable to someone she trusted, Gail was reading it in real time from her living room. Carmen sat on the couch and didn't speak for a long time. When she did, her voice was flat in the way voices go flat when the anger is too big to shape into a tone. Every time your mother said something weirdly specific about our relationship, I thought she was just observant. That time she brought up the florist budget at dinner, the exact number, and I thought, how does she know that? She was reading my texts. I know. She was reading my texts to my mother. She was reading my text to Jess. She was reading my text to you. Carmen looked at the iPad on the coffee table. I thanked her for setting this up. I made her tea while she was installing a surveillance system on my messages. And when she left, she hugged me and said, I'm so glad you're joining the family. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that would make that sentence smaller. Owen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer it honestly. Did you know? No. Did you suspect? No. I should have. But no. She nodded. Slowly. Then she picked up her phone, opened the MIL folder, scrolled through all 47 screenshots, and added the iPad discovery as number 48. She put the phone down and said, we need to do something about this. Not next week. Not privately. I want her to hear every word read back to her in a room full of people she lied to. I looked at her. Sunday dinner? Sunday dinner. That was the moment the binder was born. Walt found the notebook 2 weeks before the cancellation. Didn't understand what it was. Gail's handwriting. Vendor names. Phone numbers. A timeline. Notes and margins. Call venue first. Wait 3 days before telling Carmen. If anyone asks, say Owen is overwhelmed. He put it in his jacket pocket. After the cancellation, after Carmen's phone call, after I went to my parents' house and told Walt what happened, he reached into the jacket and placed the notebook on the coffee table. One sentence. I found this 2 weeks ago and didn't know what it was. Now I do. I waited 5 days. Needed every piece in the binder before I moved. The following Sunday, regular family dinner at Gail's house. The dining room where I grew up eating meatloaf and learning to keep my voice down. Carmen sat next to me. Becca at the end of the table, not making eye contact with anyone. Rosa came at Carmen's invitation, sitting with the stillness of a woman who has been quiet long enough and is ready to watch. Walt in his usual chair, eating, not talking, occupying space the way Walt always occupies space. 2 of my aunts were present because Gail invited them, probably planning to use the evening to steer the narrative toward Owen's been under a lot of stress lately. After the main course, while Gail was asking if anyone wanted coffee, I stood up. I placed the binder on the table next to the butter dish. I opened it to the first tab. Mom, I need to read something to everyone here. Owen, not now. We're having. Now is the only time this is happening. I started reading. Gail's message to Rosa, dated February 3rd, 10:22 a.m., word for word, the text about me being financially unstable and not sleeping. Rosa's face tightened. I read Gail's message to Jess, dated February 9th, 10:41 a.m., the one about the wedding probably not happening. I read the emails to the florist, the emails to the caterer, the 7-week email chain with the venue coordinator culminating in the cancellation. I read the transcript of the venue recording, including the 3-second transition from performed crying to now, regarding the deposit refund. I read the texts to Dev and my other groomsmen. I read Carmen's 47 screenshots in chronological order, each one preceded by the date and time it was received. I read each one the way I read a passage to my students. Clearly, measured pace, no editorializing. The words did the work. I was just the voice. Gail reached for my arm halfway through the vendor emails. Owen, stop. You don't understand the full. I'm not finished. She tried again during the groomsmen texts. This is being taken completely out of context. If you would just let me. I'm not finished. Classroom voice. The one I use when a student talks over another student's presentation. Calm but absolute. It works on teenagers. It worked on her. When I closed the binder, the room was the kind of quiet where you can hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I sat down. Carmen stood up. She didn't look at me. Didn't look at the room. She looked directly at Gail, standing over the table, and she spoke with the focus of someone who had rehearsed nothing and needed to rehearse nothing because the truth doesn't require practice. You told my mother he was broke. You told his friends he had cold feet. You told me you were worried about him. You told the venue we were splitting up. You read my private messages for 6 months through an iPad you set up while I made you tea. You screenshotted my fights with Owen and sent them to my mother without the context that would have made them make sense. Carmen paused. One breath. And every single time, you ended with "Don't tell anyone I said this." You know what that sentence really means? It means you knew it was wrong. Every time. You said it 19 times. You knew it was wrong 19 times. And you did it anyway. Gail's mouth opened. I'm done. You don't get to respond to this. You've had 3 months of conversations nobody could respond to because you made sure nobody knew they were happening. This is mine. And I'm using it to say one thing. We're getting married. In 5 weeks. Without you. Then Becca stood up. Nobody expected Becca. Nobody ever expects Becca because Becca has spent 26 years being so quiet that people forget she's watching. Mom, you did this to Derek too. The room went still in a different way. Not the hell-breath stillness of the binder reading. The floor-shifting stillness of something new being revealed that changes the shape of everything that came before it. Becca told the table everything. Gail whispering to Derek's mother that Becca was immature. Telling Derek's friends she was clingy. Telling Becca that Derek wasn't serious about her. Derek pulling away. Becca blaming him. Finding out 6 months later when Derek's mother casually mentioned, "Your mother's concerns about you too," and Becca realized the concerns were planted, not organic. 2 children. 2 relationships. Same playbook. Becca looked at Gail with an expression I'd never seen on my sister's face before. Not anger, something harder than anger, something that had been forming for 2 years in silence. "That's not dramatic, Mom. That's a system." Dinner ended. Nobody cleared the dishes. People left one by one. The aunts first. Rosa holding Carmen's hand. Becca without looking back. Walt stood, walked to the living room, didn't speak. Gail sat at the head of her own table in a house she'd run for 34 years. And for the first time the table was empty and she hadn't decided it should be. A week later, a letter arrived at Carmen's apartment. For pages. Gail's handwriting on stationery with flowers in the corner. Not an apology. Carmen opened it at the kitchen table and read it aloud to me. Not because she wanted my opinion, but because she wanted a witness. "A mother's love sometimes looks like protection, and protection sometimes looks like interference to people who don't understand the bond between a mother and her son." Page 1. "I could see things about your relationship that neither of you could see because you were too close to it. A mother stands at a distance. A mother sees the full picture." Page 2. "The vendors were warned because I was trying to minimize the financial damage when things inevitably fell apart. I was protecting Owen's credit, his savings, his future." Page 3. "One day when you have children of your own, you'll understand why a mother does what I did. You'll understand that everything, every call, every message, was love." Page 4. For pages. Not one sentence that acknowledged reading someone's private messages for 6 months. Not one mention of the forged venue cancellation. Not one reference to Becca, or Derek, or Rosa's manufactured fight, or the screenshotted arguments. Every paragraph framed the sabotage as wisdom. Every sentence positioned herself as the only person brave enough to act on what everyone else was too polite to say. Carmen photographed every page, placed them back in the envelope, and gave it to our lawyer the next morning without comment. Gail's letter became the most useful piece of evidence in the entire case, because a woman who writes a 4-page justification of her own surveillance and sabotage without once using the word sorry has just produced a written confession and mailed it with a stamp. Narcissism isn't just a personality trait. It's a legal liability. Carmen's family rebuilt the wedding in 5 weeks. Rosa called her church the morning after the Sunday dinner. The pastor picked up, listened for 2 minutes, and said, "This building is for people who need it." I'd say this qualifies. Saturday works. Luis built a reception arch in his garage. Cedar from a lumber yard that owed him a favor from a hauling job 15 years ago. He sanded it on a Saturday and stained it on a Sunday while listening to baseball on the radio. Rosa brought him a beer without being asked. He didn't say much about the situation because Luis doesn't say much about most situations, but Carmen told me he was in that garage every evening after work for a week straight. When she asked him if he needed help, he looked up and said, "This is the help." Carmen's sister handled flowers through a wholesaler friend for $100 instead of the original $1,600. Carmen's co-workers organized catering as a potluck with a professional dessert table from a bakery that had been selling Rosa birthday cakes for 20 years. Rosa called the owner. "I need a favor." "Owner, name it." "Rosa, a dessert table for 60. My daughter's getting married. The original wedding was canceled by someone who shouldn't have had the phone number." "Owner, I'll charge ingredients only." "When is it?" The wedding Gail destroyed at $15,000 was rebuilt at $2,800 by people who actually wanted it to happen. A church that said yes in 2 minutes. A garage that became a workshop. A bakery that charged for flour and nothing else. Try canceling that with a phone call. You can't. Gail's weapon only worked against systems she could impersonate her way into. She couldn't impersonate her way into love. Love doesn't have a booking reference number. Where things stand. Gail is in the house. Alone most of the time now. She called Rosa once, 2 weeks after the dinner. Rosa listened for 30 seconds. "Mrs. Reeves, I have nothing to say to you that a priest wouldn't say better. Please don't call this number again." Walt moved out of the bedroom a week after the confrontation. Not the guest room, the living room couch. And he opened a bank account. His own. First time in 34 years. Pension, $2,100 a month. Deposits into an account Gail doesn't control. He didn't announce it. Didn't explain it. One direct deposit at a time. Walt is building something that belongs to him. I don't know if it's an exit. I don't think he knows either. But it's his. Becca moved out 3 weeks after the dinner. Packed while Gail watched from the kitchen doorway. Where are you going? Somewhere that doesn't have a system. You're being dramatic, Rebecca. Becca zipped the suitcase and looked at her mother for a long time. You told Derek's mother I was clingy. You told my brother's friends he had cold feet. You told his fiancée he was broke. You told everyone not to tell anyone. You read Carmen's private messages for 6 months and used them like ammunition. She picked up the second suitcase. That's not dramatic, Mom. That's a system. And I'm done being inside it. 2 suitcases and a laundry basket full of books. She came back for the rest the following Saturday while Gail was at church. She didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to write that the suitcases hadn't already said. Becca and Carmen have coffee every Wednesday now. They meet at a place near Carmen's clinic with good pastries and bad lighting. They don't talk about Gail. They talk about Becca's co-workers, a cooking show they're both watching, whether Becca should get a cat, and a trip to the coast they're loosely planning for September. Carmen told me Wednesday coffee is her favorite hour of the week. I asked why. She thought about it for a second and said, because neither of us is performing. Nobody's managing the conversation. Nobody's calculating what to say. We're just 2 people talking. She paused. I forgot what that felt like. Carmen and I got married. In Rose's church. Under Luis's arch, which still smelled like cedar stain and had one slightly uneven leg that Luis noticed during the ceremony and plans to fix next weekend, but probably won't because it's already part of the story. Surrounded by people who showed up because they wanted to, not because Gail hadn't gotten to them yet. The photographer captured one shot neither of us noticed until the proofs came back. Carmen and me at the altar. Walt behind us, hands clasped, looking at his son with an expression that carried 34 years of things he didn't say. Becca in the second row, wiping her eyes with a tissue she'd brought from home because Becca plans for everything now. Luis and Rosa holding hands the way people hold hands after 35 years, loosely, comfortably, without needing to prove they're doing it. And in the far background, barely visible if you don't know to look, an empty chair in the last row with a place card that reads Gail. In calligraphy nobody remembered ordering. Nobody removed it. Nobody sat in it. It stayed there through the vows and the first dance and the toasts and the cake and the moment when Luis's arch wobbled slightly and everyone laughed. The photographer didn't plan the shot. She just noticed the chair. I keep the notebook in the drawer next to our marriage certificate. Gail's handwriting. Vendor names. A timeline. Call venue first. Wait 3 days. If anyone asks, say Owen is overwhelmed. Sometimes I open the drawer and look at them side by side. The plan to destroy it and the proof it survived. I need to see them together because I need to remember that the same woman who held me when I had nightmares as a kid also sat down and wrote a step-by-step plan to dismantle the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't know how to hold both of those things at the same time. I don't know if I ever. Anyway, that's the story.